So how would you respond if you found out that you had pancreatic cancer? Well, today I'm meeting with my friend John, who recently just learned that he does in fact have pancreatic cancer. And we're going to be talking about the moment that he learned that news. We're going to be talking about how he responded to it, talking about his faith and many other things. And we're going to be joined by his wife, Alicia. Should be a great conversation, so why don't you join me? Well, John and Alicia, thank y'all so much for this opportunity to sit down and have this conversation. Just love you guys so much. And in fact, John, you and I got to have a preliminary conversation to talk about this news and how you've been processing it just a couple weeks ago. And I really wish that we had the camera rolling then, because there was such good things that came out of it. But Alicia, I'm glad you're here because you're going to add a really great perspective to this whole thing.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I guess it's been, what'd you say, about 12 weeks or something like that? About 12 since you got the news of pancreatic cancer, which was such a shock. It's always a shock whenever you get any kind of diagnosis that's, just so serious like that. But it was especially surprising to me and many others for you because you've been so healthy and strong running. You were training for an ultra marathon or some 50 miles or something like that.
Yeah, it came as a bit of a shock. I started having low back pain that we couldn't explain and wouldn't go away. And we ended up in the hospital and they put me in a CT scan and came back out. And next thing we knew, we were in there with fake 5 oncology doctors of telling us it's stage 4 pancreatic cancer that had metastasized to my liver and into my ribs.
Oh, man.
So it was, 12 weeks ago. It was a big shock.
Yeah. And you had been training for this, and
I was 2 weeks out from the race, and I'd done the race last year. So I was 2 weeks out from the 50-mile, the Cloudland Canyon 50-mile trail race, which I'd done last year with some buddies. And so I was heavy into a training cycle, and we thought at first that's what the back pain was from, just over trash.
Sure.
And so I was probably in as good a shape as I've been in my whole life. And we didn't have cancer on our radar skirts at all.
Nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a shock.
Well, I had talked with your parents about it, actually, and they had mentioned just how you have such a high pain tolerance, and so I thought I did.
We found our limits.
Well, I'm sure there's a limit for all of us, and this is a particular case where, everybody can understand. But so talk about that moment going in there, you hear that news, shock. What's the reaction?
Man, that's a tough one. You want to hit it first, or you want me to?
Well, I'm going in thinking, oh my goodness, he's going to have back surgery. Like that's the horrible thing
Right.
we're about to face.
Yeah.
And
We shockingly calm, though.
we were very calm. The ER doctor came in, was we liked him the whole time, was very wonderful. The nurse that had been with us came in with him. I don't know if that's normal, but they were both there. And he just said, this is some part of my job I really don't like.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, we're going to have back surgery. And then he goes, we did the CT scan and there's a mass on your pancreas. And I just went, yeah, what are those words? And then he said, and then it's metastasized to your liver. And then we see lesions on your ribs. And I'm just going, actually, he was laying in the bed and I was sitting over in a chair. It's in the ER, so it's not that far away. And I'm like, I need you to stop for just a minute, just a second. And John looked at me like, what do you need? And I just like, I need to sit over there. And so I just picked up my chair, moved it over, and we held hands. And
Yeah.
he finished talking to us. And it's just surreal.
Yeah.
And I think at first it was just business. It was like things were moving real fast. They were like, hey, we're going to do a biopsy. As soon as we get that back, we're going to start chemo. And so we walked out of there thinking, we got some stuff that has to be done. We need to find a second opinion. We need to get some more information. We need to, who can we talk to that can get us? And some more information because we got some decisions to make and we didn't feel qualified to make the decisions. So we walked out of that room and started, I think one of my very first phone calls, I called Ulrich Bretbuell, who had been trying to get in touch with me and was like, hey, man, I knew Ulrich had good contacts in the medical community. And I was like, look, here's what's going on. We haven't told the kids. We haven't told anybody yet. But here's what's going on. I need you to find me a second opinion person immediately.
Yeah.
And somebody that could do it via video or phone or whatever. And so Ulrich jumped on it. Another friend, Don McLaughlin, jumped on it. And we had, within an hour or two, we had...
Of the next day, not that.
Within a day, we had all our second opinion people lined up who we needed to talk to. Dr. Flowers called, referral through Don McLaughlin, called my phone, who's the head of oncology at MD Anderson. Ulrich had us set up to meet with multiple hospitals in the Northeast. And we just started gaining information so that we could make decisions.
Yeah.
And we were still just full speed ahead. But I don't think it really settled in for several days, at least, if not longer.
I'll say it longer.
Probably.
That was one of the parts of the story when you and I were talking previously that just really stood out to me, is because you have so many people that you have connected with relationally through the years, you probably have more information than you needed just because you had so many people working on your behalf. I was like, how would people do this if they didn't have the network, right? If they didn't through, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just,
and that's the real shame. And we've talked about this 100 times.
Every day, I think we'll say.
Is what do you do if you don't have a supportive wife, family, church community? And going through these things is really hard. Just keep it out with my medications because it's changing once or twice a week.
Yeah.
And I don't keep up with them at all. She lays out. I feel like a 90-year-old grandma cooked so many pills. And I went from taking a multivitamin every day to taking 20-something pills a day overnight. And just keeping up with that kind of thing is so time intensive. I don't know how people do it that don't have this kind of support. I will say one thing we've learned, though, on this is you have to reach out for help. Because when we've picked up the phone, dialed a friend, when we've asked somebody, hey, we've got this issue, things happen. Good things flow in, and they happen quickly. But it seemed to become apparent to us that there has been a requirement for us to ask.
Yeah.
And not just prayers about it, but to ask someone specific.
Yeah. No, that's great.
I had noticed that before in my prayer life, but it's become very clear that's God.
Yeah. So maybe some of the people watching this either have recently, received a diagnosis that they're not really sure what the next
or had any kind of major issue.
Yeah.
Don't be hesitant to reach out to your family, friends, church community because they have a requirement to serve from God.
Yeah.
This is something they've been asked to do, and you don't want to get in their way of fulfilling their mission. And their mission is to help you or other people. And if you don't ask and people don't know, that's a lot to put on, God, okay, God, I'm going to pray to you. And then you're going to let Bill know. And then Bill's going to do this and do that rather than me just ask it directly.
Yes. And also when people have said, hey, we want to do this, I've said yes.
Yeah.
Even if it's something I'm like, I don't know what I want to do with that.
And the instinct can be to say no because it's too much sometime or you don't want to deal with it. Say yes. Let people serve you because it's good for them.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, every time I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I needed it.
Yeah.
I really, at the time, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with that. But then it was like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize. My mom and dad are coming this weekend. I'm going to eat that.
Yeah. Wow.
Sit around with food. We've had people bring in what we consider to be too much over to the house. But as it's worked out, we've had a lot of people over there eating, so we needed it.
Yeah.
So it's worked out well.
Yeah. Well,
don't be quick to say no.
Yeah.
To people.
Well, yeah, and I guess maybe another thing I would just say to anybody watching is also just don't wait until this moment happens to start building those relationships that you can fall back on because, we can take those for granted or just put that off. But I mean, y'all have just been so blessed, it seems like, by so many close relationships.
We are. Relationships take time, and they take some focus. I mean, you've got to be intentional about your relationships. Relationships fall apart on their own.
Yeah.
They take time, and you got to be willing to spend that time.
Yeah.
And you gotta be willing to be bullshit too sometimes.
Mm.
That's hard.
I'm sure we could get pretty deep on that one. And maybe let's come even further back to that one here in just a second, because I think that's touching on a really good point. I want to talk about pancreatic cancer specifically. There's all different diagnoses you can get, and this is one that most people know is a really scary one. So what right now where you are, you're 12 weeks from diagnosis to now. You're into the treatment plan, right? Talk about the treatment plan a little bit, about what you're experiencing, where you are in that. And
so right now I'm on a pretty generic chemo regimen for pancreatic cancer. About 85% of people that get pancreatic cancer are just like me. They're at stage 4 when they find it, because it doesn't show any symptoms until it jumps outside of your pancreas and begins to metastasize. So they usually don't find it unless they're in there taking out someone's appendix or something like that, and they're like, oh, we got an issue. So right now we're on a pretty generic protocol. We'll be finished with that in 3 weeks.
Yes.
2 weeks from Monday. And then they will redo my PET scans, and that will show us what progress we've made. We know from my blood test and markers that everything's moving in the right direction, but we don't know how far we progressed on shrinking the tumors specifically. And so we'll know more about that in about 3 weeks.
yeah. And when you
It's been ugly. The chemo has been horrific.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, throwing up, can't keep anything down, no appetite. I've lost 42 pounds
Oh my gosh.
in 12 weeks.
You were already a lean guy.
Yeah. So I went from 160 to 118.
Wow.
And when you can't keep anything down, nothing sounds good. Everything makes you. We were watching TV night before last, and on the show we were watching, someone had handed this man a tomato sandwich, and it looked good. And so I said, pause. And we paused, and I said, tomato sandwich. So Alicia jumps up, she runs in there, thin slice of tomato sandwich. I'm like, this is going to go down right. I take one bite, 2 chews, and I'm throwing up.
how was that? What? He said the bread smelled like yeast. I'm like,
Yeah.
because it's bread.
And it's so unpredictable what is going to taste good. Getting down calories has been a major, major issue. Part of that is because your pancreas creates enzymes that help you digest fats and meat. So I can't eat meat.
Oh.
And fats are hard to digest.
Yeah.
And that's been a real problem. And so it's hard to put on weight if you can't eat meat.
Yeah.
And other things that are saturated fats and all just don't go down well.
Yeah.
So we're working on that with the doctors.
I want to get to what's kind of been going through your mind as you've been in and out of the hospital, having treatment. I want to get to all that here in just a second, but you said standard protocol. For those who are not familiar with what the protocol looks like, you've got multiple rounds of chemo.
Yeah, so I do 3 different chemos. So I go in the hospital. It's about a 6-7 hour process, and they'll pump. I've got a port in here, and they'll pump 2 different kinds of chemo over about 7 hours. And then they will hook a third type of chemo in here that's hooked to a fanny pack.
Yeah.
And I'll wear that for the next 46 hours.
Wow. What would you have wanted to know before all of this? But I'm about to throw up. Okay. Yeah, you're good. You're good. Alicia, let's you and I talk for just a second. Okay? Let's back up in the conversation. He's got his own dealings with grief and everything that he's processing. Let's talk about you for just a second, okay? You okay?
I'm all right.
Okay. All right. How did this all hit you?
Well, I've always been very, very positive. Like it's we got this. It's gonna be good. It's wonderful. And not wonderful, but we've got this. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be okay. And it's just hard. It's really hard when you're seeing your best friend of 35 years.
35. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, We'll be married 35 years in June, but we've known each other for 30, almost 7.
Because y'all went to high school,
Well, college.
college together.
Yeah. You know, he's my best friend. And, you know, we've done everything together. And it's hard to see someone who is so strong, spiritually, emotionally, physically, so strong, and then having to help him literally sit up in bed and move his legs out of bed because he's dehydrated. It's awful. It's horrible.
And it's I imagine it's in some ways it's harder on you watching, just feeling so helpless. I'm just so sorry. But
I'd almost rather be me.
yeah.
Because then I would know I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I think we got a very positive, even, and the reason I still know it's okay is that even if he's not here, he's somewhere better.
Hmm.
And that God has me.
Hmm.
I'm okay.
Yeah. Alicia,
I know I don't want to be okay, but I'll be okay.
yeah. We haven't even had an opportunity to talk in all of this, but we're friends on Facebook.
Yes.
So I have gotten to see, I mean, from day one, posts that you've been putting out that have just been so inspirational for me personally and for many, many others, putting out scriptures that are speaking to you and other things. Talk about your faith a little bit and how you have just leaned on that clearly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think, goodness, it's probably 6, 7 years ago. There was a devotional I was going through. I think it's when the Bible app came out, honestly.
Yeah.
So whenever that first started, when the Bible app came out, and it was a devotional, and it was talking about how we spend so much time on social media, you know, instead of being in the Word.
Yeah.
And I was like, I do that. I really do that. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to concentrate at least on my personal social media posts to be more intentional about reflecting God.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm just going to start posting, try to daily, but sometimes life gets in the way.
Yeah.
But daily posting a scripture that was from a devotional I did, or from a Bible reading I did that day, or, you know, sometimes it's a card someone sends me, or something like that. And I was like, I'm going to do every day. I'm going to try to do that.
Yeah.
And so, number one, that was, I think, a good thing to put out for others. But then also was every day, then I was focused on being in the Word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
All right. Thanks. No, that's good. Welcome back to
If
the
you
conversation.
announce yet,
It hits when it hits, man, and there's no predicting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just seeing where this conversation goes, and now we know. Oh, take it away from the food and
Yeah, good.
So-
I would appreciate that very much. It was a little bit funny, guys. It was a little bit funny.
So while you were out, Alicia and I were talking about just her own faith and how she's leaned so much on that during these last 12 weeks, and how inspirational it has been for me. I mean, truly knowing what he's been going through, having family members who have gone through rounds of chemo, and just I've seen what that has done to them and how hard it is to be the one watching. It's been so inspirational for me to see you posting about your faith and about leaning on the Lord and trusting on Him. And
I don't want anybody to ever have to go through this as a patient. Definitely don't want anybody to ever have to go through it as a caregiver. But I do want to say, even if you don't know God, He's there.
yeah,
He knows you.
yeah,
He knows who you are. He created you. He loves you. And even if you don't know him, you didn't know him before, you could call on him as he's there.
Amen. Amen.
Going through this, as tough as it has been, I wouldn't trade spots with Alicia. Being the caregiver would be horrendous. And so I've really gained a deep appreciation for people who are the caregivers in these relationships, because she's a phenomenal job with it. I think it's harder to be the caregiver than it is to be the patient.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we forget that.
Yeah.
That it's hard to see. It's so hard for the caregiver to see your loved one suffer and deteriorate physically. And I know that's been hard on Alicia, because I've deteriorated a tremendous amount in 12 weeks. Or 40 pounds is a lot on a guy who didn't start out that big.
Right.
I lost 25% of my body weight.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And it's hard for her to watch. And she has always been a woman of deep, deep faith. And I always knew that. And that it has come in real handy.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
And this is probably a good time to just talk about some of the faith stuff that we've been dealing with. And one thing that we've really appreciated is we felt very biblical in God sending us signs. And it's not like I didn't know that God was involved in our daily lives, but I think I'd always had this viewpoint that God's real busy. And so he's busy over here, and then he checks in on John every once in a while. It's like, how's John doing? Okay, John, he flew in, now I'm getting busy over here. And I think that's somewhat of a view that I had mistakenly had. But God's made it so clear to us that he's involved in this situation, specifically on the medical side. One of the guys that I reached out to, he's super connected, is Don McLaughlin, who a lot of people know and a lot of people in the video will know.
Yeah.
Don showed up at the hospital, I think about 30 minutes after, I don't remember how long that was, after the doctors met with us, sometime after.
This not the night of our ER visit, the next day.
And as Don showed up to visit, and I pulled him out of the hallway so the two of us could speak alone, and was like, look, here's what's going on. We haven't told the kids yet. We haven't told anybody yet, but here's what's going on. I need you to get in your cell phone and find me a second opinion guy, because we're gonna have to make some decisions real fast. And Don's like, okay, let me get to work on it. Sometime later, it wasn't very long, measured in hours, not days, we were in with all the doctors had come in to meet with us again, and we'd cleared, I guess, everybody out of the room except for me and you, and my sister was there. And we're sitting there, Alicia had been babysitting my phone, and all of a sudden I hear my phone ring. She looks down, looks at my phone, and says, I've got to take this. She's taking notes, hands the notepad to my sister, and leaves. And I think, who could possibly call that she would leave the meeting with all the cancer doctors? Like, not her parents, not my parents. Oh, well, she's smart and I trust her, so I'll get the answer later. So you pick up the source from there.
No, it was Dr. Flowers.
Yeah.
From MD Anderson, Houston. And Don had said he's probably going to call you. So I was like, hello? And he had been an oncologist at Emory.
Mm.
And so he just kind of talked me through like who's your doctor? And was like, okay, I worked with her, I like her a lot. Want you doing this, and this, and then
Volunteered to be our second opinion guy.
yeah, said, anytime, this is my personal cell number. Anytime you can text or call, and I'll get back in touch with you as soon as I can. And we did have texted him a couple of times, and like within an hour, he's calling us back. So,
And what we did not realize then, but
No.
figured out later,
I didn't realize who he was. And then Don was like, he went to church with you. And I was like, oh, his son and Athley were in the same grade in the youth group together. And I'm like, so the next time we called, he was like, oh, yeah, I know who you are.
and he's close friends with several close friends of ours. But back when we knew him as a church guy. We didn't know he was a doctor.
Didn't know it was a doctor.
Yeah.
No clue.
Wow.
And so God's just done so many things like that in our situation, that he's made it so clear that he's handling the medical stuff. We still had a job to do, but our main job is what Paul talked about in a lot of his letters. And Paul talks about being content and finding joy in whatever situation, whether slave or free, in jail or not. I know I'm misquoting a little bit here. That Paul figured that he had the same job to do. And so through this process, Alicia and I have come to kind of have a couple of things as mantras in here. One of them has been that we had always kind of led a life of adventure, and this is just the next one for us. And the other one is that our job is the same every day. Get up in the morning, spread a little bit of love, spread a little bit of Jesus, and trust God with the rest. And that's really what we tried to do through the process, is let God worry about God's stuff, the medical stuff. We still got a job to do. I still got to show up for my chemo appointment. I still got to show up for doctor's appointment. Alicia's still got to get all my medicine straightened because she knows I'll struggle with that. We still have jobs to do, but the trust is in God, not in the medical profession.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one more quickie that happened this Sunday that you can kick out of, is we've been looking, Emory's been very impressive that they have us meeting with a naturopath doctor.
Yeah, it was a naturalist doctor.
Okay.
And they've been very open to non-medical alternate therapies.
Traditional medical.
Yeah, I'm not sure as in a word. So one thing that I'd be doing is oncology acupuncture. I don't know if it's working or not. They're paying for it. So I go to it.
Yeah.
One thing that the doctors had mentioned that we actually knew a lot about was hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Yeah.
So the big hyperbaric change. Sure. We'd used one 12 years ago with my son after a head injury.
You'd be my son too, but that's
Our son. Yep, that is. We only have one. That is our son. When he's acting right, he's my son. When he's acting wrong, no, I'm just kidding.
no, he's acting wrong. He's your son.
That is exactly right. And so they mentioned hyperbaric chamber. Well, we're looking for, and Dad had taken me down to a place that you pay, it's $450 a month, and you could go in as many times as you want to. Well, the problem is I can't drive because of the opioids that got me on. So you're an hour down there for an hour back. Somebody's got to drive you, and they only had one machine. And well, buying a machine for your house is expensive. They're $18,000.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of looking at it, and we really wanted to be using it, didn't. So Sunday, we're pulling out of the parking lot of church. One of our really good couple friends texts Alicia. She driving. One of our couple friends texts Alicia and says, "Hey, we're meeting the preacher and his family for church. Y'all want to meet for lunch?" We're like, yeah, we'd love to. So we go over there and meet for lunch, have a great time, and our preacher, Rob, and his family left. So we're sitting with these couple that we've been friends with since.
Well, y'all were 12.
Yeah, Chris and I were 12 years old when we started running around together. We're best friends all through school and then together in college when you and I were dating.
Yes.
That's Chris Willis.
Chris Willis. Yeah. So we had Chris and Rita. And Rita is a high-level nurse. She's a teaching nurse. So kind of as a throwaway, because I know a lot about hyperbaric chamber. Rita, what do you know about hyperbaric chambers? She kind of looks at me funny, and Chris goes, "Well, my mom's got one." I was like, "Your mom's got one? Why's your mom got one?" He said, "Well, my dad used it when he had his brain tumor, and Mom, but they don't use it anymore." I was like, "Well, where is it?" He says, "I don't know." I said, "Well, call your mom and see if I can buy it from her."
Yeah.
So he picks up the phone. We're in this Mexican restaurant up in Condon. Picks up the phone, comes back to the table. He said, "My mom says it's sitting in her friend's she shed. You can come pick it up today." And I said, "Well, how much does she want for it?" She said, "You can't buy it, but you can borrow it for as long as you want to." So my son-in-law came over with his pickup, and Chris's little brother, Brad, helped me. We picked it up that day from Chris's mom with Brad's help, moved it into my house, and then Tiny Willis came and sent it up with a friend of hers, and now we're using it every day.
That's awesome.
And so talk about a God moment. I never should have brought it up. I knew that I wanted one. We were trying to figure out finances on it. Something inspired me to bring it up in front of Chris and Rita, and now I have one sitting in my house that I didn't have to pay $18,000 for.
Yeah. That's amazing.
We just had to pay the electricity to run it.
Yeah.
And Tiny was thrilled to move it in our house that we're getting use out of.
Yeah.
And so it was a blessing all the way. It was a huge blessing for us, but it was also a blessing for her.
Yeah.
And for her to get to see this thing that they bought go to good use.
Yeah. That's awesome.
The guy keeps showing us things like that. So we feel like the Old Testament where the guys are saying, "Hey, Lord, I need a sign, make the sheepskin wet and the ground dry." And guy keeps showing us those things and giving us that reassurance that he's in control.
But
And that he's driving the train.
Baby things.
Like
that
friends reaching out and texting and calling.
I have a friend from high school that if he walked in that door, I would not know him. And
You've seen him in 40
you haven't seen him in 40 years.
Yeah.
I think he came to our very first reunion a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know him.
Yeah.
And his wife passed from brain cancer a few years ago. He has sent John every 2 weeks a book that's just long enough that he could read it during chemo, during his infusion.
And I've never met this guy. And I get these packages from him because he cares and he's a good guy.
Wow. That's awesome. But this comes back to the relationships. I mean, it's amazing.
But someone like that has a heart for us who I don't know, I've never met.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
We got 2 big boxes today from a friend of her parents who we've met a few times over the years, but not a ton, who just care and had a heart to do something.
Yeah. It's awesome. So earlier we were talking about Alicia and how hard it is for you to watch what John's going through. And I've spoken with your parents. I know how hard it's been for them as well. I've seen glimpses of that. You got some kids as well.
Yeah.
Talk about what their reactions have been and how y'all have processed with them, just the reality of what's going on.
So that was obviously a big concern from the beginning. We were several days late in kind of really telling them.
Well,
We were really late.
our oldest,
Yes.
we kind of kept her clued in
Yeah.
from the beginning.
But the kids have been great. They've really leaned into their faith. And even though they have seen me at times that were really, really tough, they seem to have done really well with it and had a lot of faith and leaned on that, hey, we're going to get through this. It's just some days are going to be ugly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of in our attitude too, that we're going to get through this. This is all happening according to God's plan. And I'm not saying that God gave me cancer. That's not what I mean. But the future of this will happen according to God's, what word am I looking for? You're better at this than I am.
Well, God didn't plan for you to have cancer,
Okay.
but God prepared for us for you to have.
So that's probably a good place to jump from the kids, and then we'll jump back to the kids is, when this hit, I was in the best physical shape I'd ever been in. I was in the best spiritual shape I'd ever been in. Our marriage was probably stronger than it's ever been. And so God had been preparing us for years, knowing this was coming. And so we had all that to lean on when this hit. And I think our kids saw that too. And our kids knew.
We didn't have to come to we're gonna get over this, whatever argument it was, so that I can now be your caregiver.
Yeah. Our marriage was in great shape.
Yeah.
Spiritually, we were both in really good shape. I didn't have any other physical comorbidities. The doctor didn't have to give me a lecture, hey, you need to lose 50 pounds. We need to take care of your type 2 diabetes. So it was
You need to stop drinking.
you need to stop drinking or smoking. So I was already in good shape for those. And I think our kids, with their spiritual background, I think their attitude has been one of, we're going to get through this. It's just going to be ugly some days. And that's kind of been how it's played out.
And that no matter what, we're taking care of.
Yes.
So how did y'all get to that place of trust in the Lord? I know that's been many years. It's the way that you're both raised, but there's a point at which it get kept to, and you.
This is our point.
Yeah.
I mean, this is our point where it got tested. I don't know. We dealt with it before. We dealt with it 12 years ago. Our son had a really rough injury that could have been fatal, that took some while to recover from. We've had some one really rough car wreck with my oldest daughter and niece. So we've kind of felt it before, but this is the big test.
Yeah.
And so leaning into our faith on this has made this a lot easier. It's still not easy, but it brings a lot of comfort.
Yeah.
It helps tremendously.
What would you say to someone who's going through this without that kind of faith?
I don't know how you do it without that kind of faith, but you got to figure out how to get there.
You got to figure out how to pray. You got to spend time in the Word, and you've got to listen for God and be talking to God. And you just got to start doing it.
And I would say if you don't have God, you're listening to this. And so somebody puts you in touch with this conversation we're having. That person can be your point of contact.
I love that.
To say, can I sit down with you? Whoever introduced listener
Yeah.
to this conversation, sit down with that person who introduced you to this video and say, I need help.
Yeah.
I want to know how I have peace with a really awful thing.
Yeah.
I can still lose it and absolutely sit down in the shower because it's overwhelming, but that doesn't mean I don't have peace in knowing that I'm okay and he's okay and my kids are okay.
Yeah.
And my parents are okay and his parents are okay and our siblings are okay.
Yeah.
We don't know what the future is going to bring with this. We are very content that this will happen according to the glory of God. And our job is just to play our role here.
Yeah.
And let God worry about the rest.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, God is getting a lot of glory through your suffering right now and through your grieving and mourning. But I've seen the peace that passes understanding.
Yeah, that's it.
And it really does pass understanding. It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense to the world. It doesn't make sense to us. We don't even understand it, except we have the peace of Christ that just dwells in our hearts and allows us to encounter this. We know what the end of the story is going to look like for the entire world. And it goes far beyond the trials that we face. I just love that about y'all and the way that you are giving God glory. I just want to thank you for that, and the way that has touched my heart and the way it's touching so many people's. Thank you so much.
Well, look, anything that we can do to spread the kingdom, we're happy to. I do want to jump back to something that we hadn't hit on, and that you and I talked about last time we were in this room.
Yeah.
And that was, I guess I never really thought much about death or my own death. And I would just assumed it was going to kind of happen quickly one day. You live in Atlanta, you'd car wrecks and,
Yeah.
Something like that, and heart attack or car wreck, and it happened quickly. And I always thought that getting a terminal diagnosis would be a terrible thing. And I was wrong. And having the doctors come in and tell you, because this happened to us, we said, how long do I have? And they said, well, without chemo, 6 months or less. With chemo will buy you a year or 2 or 3 or so, but we need to look for some alternate treatments. And I always thought that would be terrible to know that you were going to die. And when it happened, it dawned on me, we're all supposed to know that. This is a terminal. Life is terminal. None of us are going to stay here very long. And we all should have known that. And I should have already known that at my age. And a terminal diagnosis is a wonderful thing, because what it does, it frees you up. It lets all the old baggage behind fall away. And it gives you the motivation to go say the things that you want to say to your wife, your kids, your parents, your aunts and uncles, your friends. There's people at church that you care about. And it also frees them up to say what needs to be said to you. And one thing that's made me very happy and very sad at the same time, I'll call out my buddy Justin Bagwell. Justin came to the hospital, and I've known Justin for 20 years. I think since he was a college intern.
Yes.
At our church as a youth minister. He came to the hospital, and he pulled me out, and he started talking to me about what an influence I'd been, that's not the right word, about how it always had his back and how he always appreciated that and all that. And the thing is, I never had communicated that to him, and I didn't know that he knew that. I'd always been a fan of his. I didn't know that he'd felt the love.
Yeah.
And so for him to share that with me was very meaningful. But I thought before, I was like, wow, I've known this guy 20 years. I should have been sharing this all along. And he should have been sharing with me all along. And why do we feel like we have to wait till somebody has something really tough happen in their life to tell them, you're important to me, man. I love you and I appreciate you and you're important to me. And having a terminal diagnosis will make that very easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's hit us hard, is all the people that have come up to us and told us just little things about where we had an impact on them in a big way.
That we forgot.
It was no big deal to us. It was just going through life, trying to be nice maybe.
Yeah.
But it had a really big impact.
John, I was just going to say this, just on the point of you need to tell people the impact that they've had on you.
Don't miss those opportunities.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to miss it now. Actually, I've already told you this before, but I'll say it again. You have played a real encouragement role in my life over the last few years. Just random calls from you. I'll just be like out doing yard work or doing something. I'm like, hey, getting a call from John Wood, just pick it up. And we talked for a few minutes, and it's always just been you encouraging me and, sharing different things. It's just meant so much to me. I mean, it's just, it's who you are. And I've sensed that has just only increased a lot over the last 12 weeks as you become even more intentional about doing that. And
well, different people have different gifts. Encouragement is one of both of our gifts.
Yeah.
And so that comes easy to us. But for other people, it may not be your thing, but find a way to connect with people.
Yeah.
Like one thing that was neat about this is Alicia had read the Bible through several times on a yearly Bible reading. Last year was the first year that we had done it together, and that I had completed the whole thing in a year.
Yeah.
She'd done it many times. And so this was kind of neat. We get this diagnosis right as we're finishing reading through the Bible together, and we'd spend a lot of time. I probably spent more time in the Word, I know I did, this last year than I ever have. So God had us very spiritually prepared for this battle, and we are looking at it as a battle. God had us very well prepared for this, and so we've stepped into it, and we're looking at it as a bit of a spiritual battle. And I think that's made it easier for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're not spending, it takes about 10 minutes a day to read through the Bible in a year.
And a little bit more.
Everybody's got 10 or 12 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And if you find it easier, Alicia likes to read it. I find it easier to listen to it while I was either jogging or walking or in my car by myself.
Yeah.
Man, you could do it driving to work, driving home. Spend some time in the Word. Read through the Bible in a year if you've never done it. I was 56 years old before I did it. Embarrassing. But hey, I did it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it again this year.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Spend some time in the Word.
Yeah.
More time in the Word than you are.
I love that.
Exactly. And I've been thinking, so going back to hey, someone doesn't have a church family, hasn't read through the Bible. And I would say I have a pretty strong spiritual self, and John said read through the Bible a couple of times and do devotionals, but there's been times in the last 12 weeks, not where I was angry at God or even felt alone, but I was just so overwhelmed that the only thing I could do was just say help. I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
That was all I could do. And if that's all you know how to say, just say help, because God is there. He's there listening to you. He loves you. Even if you don't know him, even if you've never called his name.
Yeah.
He just say help. And he will help you either have a calmness about that or he'll send someone to help you.
Yeah. Wow.
And it may not be immediately. Don't get discouraged.
Yeah.
You need to go through this spiritual journey with somebody else. And for men, I recommend another man, and for women, another woman. And so over the last 5 years, I've spent a lot of time with two guys, my buddies Brett and Aminu, on my spiritual journey. And in addition to what I was doing separately with my wife and my dad. So you need other people to go through this with you. So find someone that can walk alongside you. Maybe it's in a mentor situation. Maybe it's someone walking right beside you. You're figuring it out together. But find somebody to get on the spiritual journey with you and talk to them every day. And just make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you will figure it out.
We weren't made to do it alone.
No.
Yeah.
You can't do it alone. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing about just the way we were designed that I think so many people overlook because you're busy with life, you're busy with your own thing, and then you have something like this, and you all have your faith to lean back on. And a lot of the people just don't know that life isn't about them, and that they were designed for relationship. They were designed for relationship with the Lord, and so I pray that what y'all have shared will transcend, will speak to the hearts of those who are watching, and really have an impact on them. I want to just give you an opportunity, just considering who all may be watching this, from friends, family, children, maybe just random people. Is there anything else that you want to share?
Thank you. I want to say thank you to everybody who is praying for us, have donated money for us to get therapies and pay $10,000 medical bills. And, that's our deductible.
Yeah.
And we have met it.
Yeah.
And to, thank you. It's overwhelming, but a huge, or for simply smiling at us and giving us a hug.
The kindness of everyone has been overwhelming, and we can really, people say they're praying for us. We can feel that. We can feel all the love, and we can feel the prayers.
It's like the Holy Spirit's literally behind us with this. You know how you help a little kid toddle along like that?
Yeah, it does feel that way. And it's been great. And we're so thankful, and we hate it that we just don't have the time or energy to tell everyone, to give everybody a hug and tell them how much we appreciate their prayers and their good wishes. But we are overwhelmed.
Well, God is the master of bringing good things out of bad situations.
Always.
And
And we see blessings out of this situation, and we are grateful for those.
Yeah.
And we do see that it is having an impact on others in a spiritual way, and we're very thankful for that.
well, I just want to thank you all again, just how much this means to me, and I hope for many others who will watch this. Just the way that you have been vulnerable, that you have opened up. It means a whole lot. We're getting a window into where a lot of people don't get to see unless they have to walk through it themselves. And so I pray this will strengthen their faith, or maybe even begin it in some cases. So thank you.
And we are available if something along this hit them hard and they need to talk to us. Figure out a way to track us down. We got cell phones.
No. And not that I wanted us to go through this, but I want God to use us through this.
And it will become clear to us the blessings that are coming out of this. It already is.
Yeah. God's getting the glory. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.